Hello, this is a talk on being funny. Hello. Apparently, people think I'm funny and people want to learn how to be funny as well. But good news, you can. So, overall, these are my just strats for humor in general and telling jokes specifically for tech people. A lot of these rules can apply to other people as well, but this is telling jokes for tech people. Every single moment in life is an opportunity. And I don't mean this in like a meaningful way, even though I guess it kind of is an opportunity to make good choices and crap. I'm saying every single moment in life is an opportunity for a pun, or for a rhyme, or for a one liner. These three rules can be applied to every single conversation that you have. Your puns and one liners don't have to be good. They don't have to make sense. They just have to be executed consistently. Because repetition is recognition. So puns, rhymes, and one-liners, also known as prose. When people start to get used to your prose, they start to expect your prose. And when they start expecting your prose, they start to feel in on the joke because they're just like, oh, this is kind of like an inside joke. I know what to expect. And then when they feel in on the joke, they feel included and they think you're extra funny because they got the joke. Because people love feeling like they're in on an inside joke, even if there isn't one. And then there's a very good example of this, and that's just in stand up acts. A lot of stand up acts aren't that good, but the audience laughs anyway. But the thing is, the audience is expecting the funniness. They generally know the comedian at least a little bit, and so they know their cadence, they know kind of how they go with it. They might not necessarily be telling puns, rhymes, and one liners, but they are telling jokes that people expect. And so the audience starts laughing, even though they're not necessarily always funny. And granted, it's can still be funny, but it's that whole concept of kind of feeling like an inside joke. And that's something where it particularly applies to tech people because tech people, they love seeing technical jokes because it's something where they're just like, oh, I understand that because I'm in tech. And so they feel a part of it. And so they're a part of this tech industry and they're a part of these jokes that are related to this very specific thing. It's kind of like the more niche the joke is, the more funny it is. And that kind of goes to a certain extent. I once made a joke that I thought was hilarious, but it was very specific to people who were in tech, not only in tech, but React developers, but also React developers who like Broadway, more specifically, React developers who liked Broadway, specifically the musical Dreamgirls. And I made a joke about the main character, Dreamgirls Effie, singing the song I Am Changing and relating it to use effect, saying use Effie because use effect in React is a side effect joke where it adds a watcher for changing variables. It was hilarious, but probably 5 people got that joke. And that's because, to those people, it was amazing. And with tech jokes, you might have to broaden it depending on the audience that you want. But that's the whole key to making these inside jokes that aren't even inside jokes. They're more like outside jokes, which I guess is a joke that nobody gets. But anyway, that's what that's kind of the core of making people laugh with you and have fun with your humor. So, long story short with that, repeating something leads to recognition of a joke, and then recognition of a joke leads to reliable laughs. And so if you constantly do a pun, a rhyme, or a one-liner, that becomes a very good shtick. And so I have some examples in my own crap. First of all, pie time. Chances are, if you have seen my Twitter at some point in time, you have seen that I tweet pie time at 3:14 every single time I see it. It's not funny, but people reply to me being just like, Cassidy, you're hilarious. This is not a joke. It's just a consistent one-liner that I say at 3:14. Another one that's more work specific is it's done. I do a bunch of like TikToks and videos for Netlify, and I was just like, oh well, if we consistently end it with "it's done," then people start to expect it, and then they think it's kind of funny, and they start replying, "It's done," and it's a whole thing. And now it's true. After doing it like 4 or 5 times, people will respond to all of the Netlify releases with "it's done," and it's become a thing. It's done, and so they feel in on the joke. Um, Another one, this one is specific to, I was emceeing an event called Women of React. And at this event, it was my first time emceeing a virtual conference. And I was like, oh, I'm not used to this audience. So I'll make a little soundboard. And so I just had like a recording on my phone that said, ah ha 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 ha, that's so funny. And so every single time I did a joke or said something, I would hit the soundboard. And at first people were just like, huh, what is this? But then over time, people just were laughing at this little soundboard and it became a thing. And so it was a one-liner that turned into something great. And then these last three, these ones are just kind of ones that I try to throw out in everyday life. Like whenever someone says something that could be interpreted as somewhat meaningful, I say, oh, I'm going to needlepoint that on a pillow. It's funny. This next one, like my butt, this one I don't often say in public, but it's one that I very commonly say amongst friends, and I say on occasion where someone would be just like, oh my gosh, that house was so cool, it was so solid, like my butt. Just throwing out that phrase amongst many different things. Sometimes it doesn't make sense, but if you say it consistently, people find it funny. And then the other one is, that was my nickname in high school. I love saying this one because you can really tailor it to a lot of scenarios. Like the other day I was playing Fortnite with a friend and she was just like, oh, I don't really like going into this river because it's so shallow. And I was like, oh, that was my nickname in high school. Just a little thing like that. It's amusing. It's a fun thing. It's a one-liner and it turns whatever someone says into a joke. And so they're kind of included on that too. So again, puns, rhymes, one-liners. Turn everything you listen to into that. You could even have been doing that while I'm speaking. And sometimes they don't have to make sense. Again, you just have to be consistent with it. That being said, this has all been kind of just like posting on occasion and talking on occasion. I want to talk a little bit about writing humor. And I don't know if any of you know this, I actually took humor writing classes in New York City for a while. And so I have actual training and practice in this. The summary is, write down everything. You never know when humor will come up, and it comes at unexpected times in unexpected places. Sometimes a joke will sit on your phone or sit in a notebook for a very long time, but then when that moment comes, it will be so sweet. It will be a beautiful moment when you can finally tell this joke that has been sitting there for so long. I have just a giant list of jokes on my phone. Sometimes they're not like, they're just things where I'm like, you know what, this could be funny someday if I come up with the right moment for it. I don't know what that would look like though. Here's some examples of jokes that I have written down, but I haven't actually told. For example, a robber shooting through a fish store and saying, holy mackerel, because it's a mackerel full of holes. A guy named Gus who is fun is fungus. Don't know how I'm going to use that, but it could be funny. Sponsor spawn sores. I was thinking that could be amusing at like a conference or something, but I don't know. Haven't figured that one out. A wildebeest that is bewildered is a bewildebeest. And then this last one, make tests not testes, S-debts against birthing males. I just thought that could be an amusing like fake group of some kind. These aren't that funny now. Someday they might be hilarious. You just got to write some things down whenever you have, a pun, a one-liner, a rhyme, something that could be put together. Write it down because you never know when you could use it. So I do have some high-level tips that will be useful as you write down blog posts, as you write social media posts, as you write anything just for humor writing in general. So first of all, surprises and twists in existing phrases and concepts and cliches. Surprises undermine expectations, and a person startled by that often laughs. You see this a lot with comedians and stuff. They'll start saying a regular phrase and then add some kind of twist at the end, and then you're just like, oh, ha, that's a good one. And I wish I had an example off the top of my head right now, but for example, a friend of mine, he did take a stand-up comedy class, and basically he talked about just like dating and how it was something that he was getting used to, and he asked someone, hey, I'd like to go out with you sometime, and she's like, and when she said no, he was saying, oh, why is that? And she's like, oh, well, I'm so glad you asked, because, and then she went into this whole, like, it's not you, it's me, but then but actually it is you type of thing. It's a little twist. That's kind of a lame excuse because it's off the top of my head. But again, surprises and twists, those work. Also, saving humor for the end of a sentence or phrase. Humor is often a release of tension, so leading up to a joke makes for a better payoff in general. And that's why sometimes even if you just go to the subreddit R jokes or whatever, you'll see that there's a very, very long paragraph and it's always tagged with this is a long joke. But then the payoff is sweet because you're just like, this was all leading up to something. Next is using contrast. So contrasting the serious and the ridiculous is very, very fun for the consumers of your jokes or the readers of your jokes. For example, if you're thinking of a developer, let's just say they're tweaking tiny little margins of a page, but then you look over at their second monitor and all of their tests are failing. Like it's an amusing thing to visualize. And so using that contrast of something very small and then something very big, or something very light, something very dark, something very minor and something very serious. Those kinds of contrasting things are really useful when you're writing stuff. There's also the use of sherbet lemons, they're called, and funny words. They're just funny little words that you throw into text that make people smile. And I think honestly, this whole Discord is pretty good at this. But whenever you are writing some kind of technical post or some kind of thing, if you just throw in like funny little words here and there, it's not even necessarily a joke, but it keeps the content lighthearted. And it makes people feel like they're kind of laughing along with you and having a good time, even if you're not necessarily telling a joke. And then finally, there's the rule of three. And the rule of three kind of combines all of the above. And this is a very common rule that is across all levels of comedy, but it's where you establish a narrative with two concepts and then you twist to a third concept at the end. And so an example is, hey, can I help you with anything? The CSS, the JavaScript, your bad attitude. Hey, so we've saved it for the end. We've established those first two as like a technical thing, but then we do a twist at the end. And it's kind of a contrast from the technical to the personal. And so it's the rule of three. It's a very, very useful rule when you're actually writing things down. So anyway, in conclusion, everyone is funny. Some people just have to work on it more. Especially Sarah. This is the part where I actually changed it to Luke and then it didn't save. So Luke, pretend I picked on you. But anyway, that's the rule of three. Hey! So anyway, in conclusion, this is high level how to be funny. And that is the end of my talk. Does anybody have any questions? Yay, thank you.
How did you first get into the whole, I'm going to go to a course to learn how to be funnier?
That is a good question. Honestly, it just sounded fun. Because for like context of just my life in general, I really am happy to see a like her butt in the chat right here. That makes me happy. When I was younger, I loved doing a lot of funny things, and then life kind of broke me. As fellow kids do and stuff, when you're a nerd growing up in high school and everything, you kind of suppress things. And then after I graduated school, I was kind of just like, wait, I do have confidence. And I was kind of just like, I should learn how to kind of get back to what I used to do when I was really, really young and what I started to do towards the end of college. And then basically I was just like, you know what, I'm gonna actually try to have fun again with making jokes and stuff like I did when I was very young. And that kind of got me to start taking the classes and just kind of experimenting with actually making jokes in public again. Like Red said, there's no better defense against bullying in school than humor. Hey, that's kind of true. Are there any other questions on things?
Just one. About jokes that could be offensive. So like, I am fairly good at the "that's what she said" jokes. But that's what you said, jokes aren't exactly agreeable for a wide audience.
Sure. That is something where you should just know your audience before saying it. And I think that's the summary. There are definitely times where I hold back on jokes where it's not even that they might be inappropriate or something, they just might not be received well, or it might not be the right timing. Know your audience well. For example, I think in this group, most people would giggle out of that's what she said joke. But might not be proper at a big tech conference. Know your audience and your timing.
Yeah.
I was wondering how hard it is to be funny in a different language, as you lived in Spanish in Spain. And I was like English is not my native language. I was like on conferences, it's like there's a really good joke about that in Portuguese, but I can't really translate on that.
Yeah, that was something where I truly was I started with Spanglish puns, and so like, for example, I went to a cheese festival in Spain, and so I was just and it was amazing, first of all, but I was just like, oh, I have the perfect joke for this, and so I said to my friend, I was just like, hey, tell me that you went to a cheese festival, and they said, I went to a cheese festival, and I was like, okay, so, because queso is cheese. Hey, and so starting it works, and so starting with kind of like the combining your native language with that, and until you get more comfortable with the language, that helped, and doing the puns, rhymes, one-liners, even words that kind of sound similar, you can do something with that. Like we were talking on Among Us yesterday, there was someone whose name was Burbuja, which means bubbles, and I was just like, there could be something there with Burbuja Bruja, like the bubble witch of some kind. It sounds similar, it sounds funny. I don't know what it is, so I wrote it down. And you never know when it'll come up. You just write it down and maybe it could be useful later.